Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Minisode number 89 on the More Than Fitness podcast. Today's topic of discussion is going to be 3 signs you might need a diet break and how to do it. I got the inspiration to make this minisode, one, because I think it's not as much common sense to have diet breaks as it is to back off with training. So for example, people typically are aware of things like burnout and overtraining whenever it comes to their workouts, right? You can't just exponentially keep working out harder and harder and expect to continually and exponentially make progress, right? But whenever it comes to dieting, people just think typically it's them, which often it is. There's some type of adherence issue. They need to figure out how to be more consistent. But given that everything is 100% on track and they're still not seeing the progress they're making, it's not as much common sense to be like, oh, maybe I just need a diet break. Maybe I need to relax for a little bit. So just like people have scheduled deloads or just periods of their workouts where they have to go a little bit lighter or maybe focus on something else, the same concept goes for diet breaks. And that was the first reason. The second reason is that I'm currently having to explain this to one of my female clients. She has been losing weight and dieting for quite some time. She's made a lot of good progress over the past 6 months. And she actually hired me to get her through the plateau. She just stopped seeing weight loss progress. And this happens often. But the unfortunate thing that I just recently had to tell her is that her metabolism is kind of shot at this point. And this is completely natural and normal and exactly what is supposed to happen. The body isn't broken or anything like that. However, she's kind of dieted herself into this rut where dropping calories any lower and doing more cardio and enjoying life just isn't going to happen, right? She would have to be militantly strict. She would have to do hours of cardio every week, and she would only be putting herself deeper and deeper into the hole of quote unquote ruining her metabolism. Just slowing down her metabolism, which brings me up to the very first sign that you might need a diet break. And that's because, and this is what has been happening with her, is that she diets well during the week. She can stick to her calories and macros and eat well. And then the weekend comes and she actually, it's not like crazy binges or anything like that. She just tends to overeat a little bit, having a meal out here and there, enjoying herself a little bit more, but then her weight spikes up a whole lot. And this is simply because her metabolism is low. So her maintenance calories, the amount of food that she has to eat to maintain her weight, is so low. So it might be around, for example, 1,500 to 1,600 calories to maintain her weight, but that means to lose weight, she has to be in a calorie deficit, right? And that's going to mean that she's going to have to eat 1,300 to 1,400 calories a day, and or add in quite a bit of cardio on top of that. And you go out to eat on the weekend, and it's like you get that easily in a single meal if you get something that you've been craving, right? The first sign is that you keep fucking up and binging, right? You try to stick to your plan, you try to stick to your low calories and macros, but then eventually the deprivation kind of catches up with you, and you binge, you overeat, and where your metabolism is already probably low, it can have a big effect, and it can cause your weight to spike, and it just causes this vicious cycle. It causes an obsession with your scale weight and an unhealthy relationship with food, and all these different things that just are not, it's not the direction you want to be going. And so again, there's nothing wrong with her. She's not broken. If this is happening to you, you're not broken. All you have to do is consider a diet break. So for each of these, I want to give you the sign and then what to do if that is the case with you. And so the first thing is you keep fucking up and binging. So you go in a calorie deficit for a while, you can't stick to it, then you binge, you overeat. So what you should do is you should focus on reverse dieting. And this is, I have an article on this, which I'll link below. And I also have a Minisode on this as well. So you can you can read those, you can watch, listen to those. I'll put those links in the description for you if you want to learn more about how and what reverse dieting is, right? But you have to reverse diet. And I would say because whenever you're super strict with everything, you don't want to just be necessarily just as strict with the reverse diet, where you, in short, reverse dieting is exactly the reverse of dieting. You start to add in calories over time as opposed to taking them away. But reverse dieting is, yes, you are eating more food, but if it's a big mental and psychological barrier for you to keep tracking and to keep being obsessed with the scale and the weight and the amount of food that you're taking in, et cetera, it might not be helpful to continue to be that obsessive, except in the other direction. Yes, it's good you're eating more food. However, the obsessive tendencies can still stay. But I also don't think, for some people, this is obviously case to case, but just saying screw it and I'm going to try and eat quote unquote normally, especially if you're constantly hungry and things, like listening to your internal cues, they're kind of all corrupt at this point, right? They're not true. And so what that can happen is if you try to quote unquote intuitive eat, well, your intuition tells you to eat everything, right? And so that's not good either. So you need some form of monitoring. And I think a good happy medium with this is to try and maybe weigh a few times a week on the scale. Possibly, I would say once a week, but I don't necessarily like once a week just because let's say you weighed once a week on Saturday. Well, if you had a big meal on Friday or you even just ate later than normal, you're going to wake up Saturday morning and it's going to give you somewhat of a false negative. So I would say weighing yourself maybe 2 or 3 times a week would be a good happy medium from going from weighing yourself every day to not weighing yourself at all. So the middle ground is maybe 2 or 3 times a week in the morning. Try and keep it consistent. And then just compare that over time, right? And then I think also another way, instead of tracking all your calories and your proteins, carbs, and fats, instead you could just do calories and protein for a few weeks. And so, reverse diet and simply aim to track only calories and proteins. And maybe eventually, after you get that down, you've built up a little bit a better relationship with food, mentally and psychologically. You've had a break, mentally and psychologically, mentally and physically. You've had a little bit of a break. Then you can maybe move away from the scale altogether for at least a period of time and kind of relax even a bit more. And then eventually later on, you could choose to diet down again, right? Whenever you've eaten more food, built your metabolism back up, that could be one strategy, right? Okay, the next sign is going to be it's simply not the right time for you to be dieting. And this isn't from a physiological standpoint. This is more so, a good example is the holidays are coming up, right? We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas coming up, you have New Year's Eve. There's just a lot of stuff going on where people are probably going to be eating out, eating meals with friends. They just don't want to deprive themselves too much during this period. So it's like, if you have fat loss goals, it's like, that's okay. You can absolutely just put them on pause for the next month or two, right? Maybe this isn't the right time for you to be dieting simply because you want to enjoy other things in life as opposed to focusing on cutting your calories. And I think that's totally fine. It's totally up to you. This could also go for if you have a vacation or something, you want to take a diet break around then, right? And you don't want to diet through that. Or if you have a big work stint, like if you have a big work project going on and you're just like, I have to focus on this right now. It's really important. And there's other things that I'm trying to juggle where my diet and exercise and fat loss or muscle gain, whatever, can't be my primary focus. So it's like, I will still monitor and do my best with things. However, I'm not going to try and go all out and have a big fat loss phase right now. So instead, what you should do is eat around maintenance calories. This is just an example of what you could do. You could eat around maintenance calories where you're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight, you're just kind of you're staying around maintenance, right? And instead of focusing on fat loss or muscle gain or anything like that, I would try and focus on other goals, like strength in the gym, maybe your flexibility and mobility, some core work, some stuff like that, or maybe like your endurance. So work on some cardio, work on different goals than you normally focus on so it can take your attention away from fat loss and you can still work on improving other things. And then whenever the time is right, then you can go back into a fat loss phase. All right, and the third sign you might need a diet break is that you're starting to burn out and or you've been dieting for 4 to 8 weeks straight. So this is more of a planned diet break so that you don't get to the first sign, right? Because what you don't want to do is realize, okay, my metabolism is super slow now. I'm binging constantly. I have this vicious cycle. This is instead a planned diet break so that your car doesn't end up breaking down at all, right? So this is simply changing your oil with that car on a schedule. And so this is, I say 4 to 8 weeks straight. It could be any other time than this, but all this does is it gives you a little bit of breath of fresh air from dieting. So you're dieting for 4 to 8 weeks straight and you're just like, okay, I need a little bit of a break. Maybe a vacation's coming up. Maybe you do have the holidays coming up. It's like, okay, you've been dieting, you've been working hard. That's great. So just give yourself a week at maintenance. And this has actually been shown in the research that it's not going to do anything negative for your progress, for your fat loss, anything. If anything, it actually helps. There's been some good research that it actually, these types of people can see better long-term success because they do give themselves a psychological break. They can maybe feel better overall about training. Their motivation can be revitalized, all these different things. So what you would do with this is eat at maintenance for about a week and then continue on with your diet. So if you've been losing fat around eating 2,000 calories per day, for example, and your maintenance calories are, let's say, around 2,300 to 2,500 calories per day. So that's all you would do. You would just eat 2,300 to 2,500 calories per day for a week and then continue back on in the deficit. And so those are the 3 signs. And the last thing is, so what could happen as a result of these diet breaks? And what could happen is you could potentially gain, maintain, or lose weight. I know, right? So it's kind of up in the air, but gaining is going to be okay simply because you'll lose it again once the break is over and you don't need to freak out. You also don't need to freak out because it could be just regaining muscle tissue that you've lost over a long period of dieting. It could be glycogen just from eating more food and carbohydrates in general. It could be water weight, right? Again, just from eating more food and the weight of food in your gut. You're physically eating more food, so you're going to weigh more as a result. You might lose weight because whenever people have been dieting for long periods of time, they start to eat more food. That's actually takes some stressors off of the body. What that does is allow your cortisol, which is the stress hormone, right? It starts to decrease the stress hormone, and cortisol also makes you retain water. So if that goes down, then also you could release some water weight. And so you could actually see some weight loss during this period of the diet break, which is great. And also tells you that you definitely needed it. And then lastly, you may maintain your weight, but you could also look and feel better as a result. You'd be able to lift harder and you could regain your motivation physically and mentally for dieting, for working out, just for life in general. Those are the 3 signs you might need a diet break and how to do it. Thank you guys, as always, for listening and for watching. See ya.